Good afternoon and welcome to this Rusty Compass Travel Tech Update. My name is Mark Bowyer and today we're going to be talking about something called bill shock. It's a disease that's afflicting more and more travellers, and the cause of this disease is your telco, your telephone company. You may already be aware that telcos are charging extraordinary amounts both for phone calls and for data use while you travel. And when I say extraordinary amounts, data, as far as I can tell, my research is suggesting that certainly out of Australia, but also out of the UK, France and other countries, that data roaming costs somewhere in the order of 1,000 times per kilobyte or per megabyte or per gigabyte what it might cost at home. So that's a pretty large amount of money, and some people have been hit up with bills of thousands of dollars for relatively low use of data. What I'd like to talk to you about today is how you can avoid suffering bill shock when you get home. And so let's start with what I'm going to show you first off is the little kit of travel accessories I go on the road with, and I'll explain how I use each one of them. First, and an essential piece of my travel kit, is this Nokia phone. I've spoken about it before. It costs all of $25 here in Ho Chi Minh City and similar amounts in other countries as well. One of the most essential travel devices, I think, is a reliable phone with a very, very, very dependable battery life. Still getting 3 or 4 days out of this thing, providing I don't use it too much, and so still a very big fan. But in addition to that, I also travel with an iPhone. But when I travel, the iPhone is used not for local calls or for international calls, but for data. So I've basically used this exclusively as a data device. And when I say data, that avails me, I don't use it for any normal phone calls, but I do use it for Skype and Viber calls. And then of course, the old iPad, and it continues to be a very trusty device for travel. So let me explain to you how I use these devices. First of all, this device, I put a local SIM card in my little Nokia phone, the locally purchased phone. I put a local SIM card in that, and I use it for calls, any kinds of calls locally, to restaurants, hotels, friends. You could use it for international calls as well, but as I'll explain later, it's not the most efficient way to make international calls. This guy becomes my data, anything that uses data, so that's Skype, Viber, I use this device for. And I actually only have, this is only a Wi-Fi iPad, and the reason I suggest that you only need a Wi-Fi iPad is because the data that I use on this, I can tether my iPad to my iPhone and use this as a Wi-Fi generating device, and this picks up the Wi-Fi signal from my iPhone 4. So let's get into a bit more detail. Before I leave Australia, there's a couple of things I do. First of all, unlock your phone. You can't put a new SIM card in your iPhone if it's locked. It's kind of disappointing that companies are even allowed to lock phones to particular SIM cards, but they do. And so you need to unlock your phone before you leave home. The other thing I do is I have a thing called a Skype in and a Skype out account. So they can be set up through Skype. What a Skype in account does is give you a local number in Australia or the US or UK or wherever it might be that you are, and that number can then be used all over the world for your travels. What it means is that your family and friends back home can call you on that number and only pay the cost of a local call, but you can receive the call using your Skype in and data on your iPhone. You can receive that call anywhere in the world, and the only charge is the local call back home in Australia. Now, a Skype in number, at the moment, it's costing about $60 a year for unlimited local calls. The other very important benefit of this is I can call anyone in Australia using my Skype in number, using my data on my iPhone, for free on a landline. So any landline in Australia, I'm here in Vietnam, I could call now using my Skype in account and the data, a 3G data account that I've set up here locally, and those calls will be free. The other really important part of this puzzle, and I'm going to write all this down as well, so you'll be able to find it on my blog. The other really important part of the puzzle is I divert my Australian telephone number to my Skype in number. So when someone calls my Australian mobile, this phone rings, but I don't have to pay any diversion fees. That $60 per year that I pay covers all those diverts. So my Telstra account in Australia, when I receive a call to that account, it diverts straight to my Skype in number, which then will ring on this phone, because this is a Skype enabled phone. Any iPhone 4 can have Skype, but you do need to have that Skype in number to make that work. And as I say, I'll put more detail on this on the blog. Really important points. As for data, this phone, I've been using it exclusively for data, as I say, and I've been spending remarkably little. It's costing me maybe $5 a week Australian to keep answering my email, everything, Skype, Viber calls, everything. And the 3G service here in Vietnam is very good. In Cambodia, it's quite good. So this is a very, very dependable and incredibly inexpensive way to travel and manage all of your communications. The problems, of course, are you need, when you go to each new country, you need to get a new SIM card. That's a bit of a pain. Here in Vietnam, it's pretty straightforward. Cambodia, it's pretty straightforward as well. Interestingly enough, the country I found it most difficult in was France, where I travelled earlier this year. So old Europe still pulls out some interesting old anti-competitive practices. So it was actually very hard to get a data-only card for this phone in France. Now the benefits of having a local SIM card in your iPhone or your Android phone are enormous. The mapping power, the fact that you can just use maps non-stop everywhere, gives you incredible flexibility when you travel. It also means you're in a better position to know whether you're drifting into dangerous parts of town. It's an enormous facility. Now, so that's basically how I'm traveling at the moment, and the result of that is my monthly telecommunications, even though I'm calling Australia very regularly and calling other countries as well, my communications costs are negligible, maybe $10, $15 a month. So maybe a bit more, sorry, maybe $20 a month. They're very low anyway. So I can highly recommend this approach to travel. As I say, it's easier in Asia than it is elsewhere. But I'd like to, as I wrap this little video up, throw out a little challenge to the telephone companies. We hear often about what a competitive marketplace the telecommunications marketplace is. I can only ask you, telcos, how it can possibly be that in a competitive marketplace, my roaming data charge is 1,000 times what it is from the locally purchased SIM card. To pay a premium is understandable, even a 100% premium. But you guys must be doing some very, very, very poor negotiation if the best prices you can extract from your local suppliers here involve charges of 1,000 times what you charge at home. So something to think about, and I look forward to the time where a company introduces a global roaming data SIM card that you can put in your iPhone when you travel, but that will require a more competitive marketplace than the one we have at the moment. Otherwise, I think we would have seen that already. Something to look forward to. As I say, I will put all this detail on the blog, and you'll be able to make a bit more sense of how to keep your telecoms costs to an absolute minimum when you travel. Thank you for visiting rustycompass.com, and happy travels.